The big news of the week, it's inescapable, is a SpaceX IPO listing tomorrow. You're obviously very intimately familiar with it, having owned XAI, which got sold to SpaceX. What does it just mean to have this behemoth coming to market tomorrow?
Look, we are all excited. I think right now, most of us in venture and in tech have been waiting for some watershed moment IPO to hopefully get the markets back open. Looks like that is upon us. And just generally speaking, I've been so excited about space tech for about 5, 6, 7 years now. And that to me is, I think, feels like a milestone moment. This was an investment thesis that was unthinkable a decade ago for most investors. And I think now people are coming to grips with the fact that space technology is really here. What would have been science fiction to us maybe 10 years ago is now science fact. And I think we're only going to see an acceleration of that.
Okay, but is it all fact? When we start talking about like a $29 trillion TAM and 10 million people on Mars, I mean, you own space companies yourself. Is just like this the way you need to think, or is a little bit of it a fantasy?
These numbers are big. The projections, the ambitions are big. I do think, though, when we think about what we are capable of as a species, space has been something that has mystified us, excited us for a very long time, especially in modern history and modern technology. This was a frontier we really believed for a long time. I know I did growing up. It was only a place for governments to build and innovate. NASA, putting a man on the moon, all that stuff was never something the private sector could do. But what we're seeing now here is undeniable. The private sector's been able to accomplish a lot, and I think it's only going to accelerate. And I do think the overall market is potentially that big. I think when we're talking about human ambition, there is no limit to that. When we talk about the opportunities in space, as low Earth orbit alone just becomes more accessible, we're unlocking pharmaceuticals, we're unlocking biotech that's going to help us here back at home. And that's the stuff that gets me fired up as an investor. That's what gets me fired up as an American. I want to see that innovation come and help us live better lives here on planet Earth.
So is having SpaceX as a public company, is that a good thing for your space investments because it shows there's a pathway for public markets, or is it a bad thing because so much money is going to get funneled into this IPO that maybe it leaves less room for some of the other space companies?
Well, the good news is where I like to invest is still so early. Very few of these companies, companies like Stoke or Astroforge are thinking about going public quite yet. They're still thinking about building and shipping and launching. I do think you're going to have undeniably a whole fleet of newly minted millionaires, multimillionaires, as well as investors. So not just the early employees, but also the investors who believe in space tech, who are now going to have capital to put into the sort of next wave. And I think we've seen that play out in tech before, and this will be no exception. And I do think that all continues to accelerate all of us in building the space economy that we're hoping for.
Building a space economy, though, it is something that certainly takes time. And I just wonder if there is room for disappointment. I mean, I don't mean to harp on sort of the crazy numbers of it all, but is there a fear that it gets too overhyped? A SpaceX IPO is just too large, and there's some disappointment, and it sets the project back to humanity, what you're talking about. It sets it back in some time.
I do think it is important to have this tempered expectation. I think on the one hand, folks have to balance what I think is a very important, almost unbridled ambition for human progress, which is, I think, a very important and noble and great quest. And at the same time, the realistic, expectations, everyone should obviously do their diligence, do their own underwriting, all that important stuff before making any kind of stock decision.
Thank you for the legal disclaimer.
Compliance is happy with me. But at the end of the day, I do think what we're talking about here is creating very real value. I know even you think about anecdotally, the difference a person has once they've taken a United flight with Starlink. There's a very, very different feeling about how you interact with technology when you've experienced just a little fraction of what the space economy can do.
Right.
And I do think as we start to unlock pharmaceuticals and biotech that could really only be done in zero G, we're talking about, again, saving lives, improving quality of life, things that I know provide a real economic value, but at the same time help us live that Star Trek future I think a lot of us grew up wanting. So I think be exuberant, be excited, but at the same time, obviously, be thoughtful in how you're underwriting this stuff.
By the way, it's not just obviously SpaceX that's IPOing. We also have OpenAI filing, Anthropic does as well. And these are companies that have had a lot of VC backing. In fact, so much so, we were talking about this on stage, 65% of VC money has gone to just 0.05% of companies. Is something broken that those are the statistics we're faced with right now?
It is a unique time. I think clearly, as an early stage investor, I am insulated from this a bit because they're the ones, these multi-stages are often marking up my early investments. And so I think where you start to see the challenge is a lot of these companies in a previous decade would have already been public. And because companies held off going public longer, the private markets became a place that was effectively dealing like a public marketplace. So you're seeing these valuations, you're seeing this increase. I think it is a positive for America and for the world that, retail, that regular folks get access to these opportunities. I frankly wish it would happen sooner because I think historically, people draw up, the market cap of Amazon or revenues of Amazon or Google when they went public. And we're in a different world now where privately held companies are able to generate tremendous revenues and market caps before going public. But I think this has been a long time coming, and I do think generally venture should be a place to be contrarian and right. It should be a non-consensus asset, and especially on the growth side, it's looking more and more consensus. So look, those companies are about to turn public. We'll see what the next wave of private looks like. I'm certainly trying to do my best to be on the non-consensus and right side early, and I do think venture is healthier as an ecosystem when it's not looking like a couple of very, very concentrated bets.
Well, usually what you say when there's a consensus is that that's a dangerous thing, and it means that there can be a correction. Do you think that that's possible for this industry if everyone is crowding around similar bets?
Look, your instincts are right, and I know you always get in trouble saying why something is different this time.
Yeah.
And with that caveat, I still think something is different this time. And I know, look, I lived through the social media wave. I naively thought the social media revolution that we were building with Reddit was like the revolution. It was not. I naively thought mobile was a revolution. It was not. I mean, it was, but in a much smaller way compared to what this is. We have seen in just a few years, technology go from an interesting novelty that could help you write like a press release to technology that could literally write code as well as or better than even some of the most senior experienced developers, and it really augments the output of folks. So there's a real technology here. It's a real shift, and I don't think it goes away. And I also think it has, as I said on stage, a national security importance.
Right.
Because so much of our lives are digital. Being able, you saw this with the way Anthropic thoughtfully rolled out Mythos, we used it first and foremost to shore up vulnerabilities that we had in our businesses here in America. And so even if AI never got any better than where it is today, that is already incredibly valuable. And there's so much wood to chop as we look across so many businesses that right now don't have any software in them. This hotel, I am sure.
Don't tell me this hotel is going to be an AI company, Alexis.
No. But I am sure that whatever systems they're using right now are very bad. And software as a layer of user experience, should be able to level that up in a meaningful way.
And by the way, I do want to just ask quickly, because we have 45 seconds left. There is this idea that the thing that survives in AI is just like live entertainment. And you have a lot of bets around women's sports.
Very much.
Has this whole revolution, this thing we're experiencing, just made you double down on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was a rare voice 5-6 years ago saying this was an institutional grade asset, not just sports, but also specifically women's sports. I love seeing this. I am certain 5-10 years from now, we will still watch, no matter how good the AI-generated highlights get, watching the AI version of that Knicks final last night would do nothing for the human soul. Because it even if it was pixel perfect, if it didn't actually happen, it is irrelevant and worthless. So live sports has to be fundamentally human. No one is going to line up to see a bunch of robots, play 18 holes of golf against each other where everyone hits a hole in one. Right? The end state of this technology is some version of this perfection that no one's going to want to watch because sport has to be human. So I've been saying this for 5-6 years now, and I'm only more confident about it. And I think what this technology does is it makes these assets more valuable. It makes them more engaging for fans. It improves training. It improves so many elements, but it does not replace by any means.